Hi, thanks for joining me for another Talk to Stu uh, advice kind of video. So, one of the things that comes up quite a lot when I'm talking with clients is how to deal with sort of stress and anxiety, worries, things like that, how to sort of self manage those kind of feelings and emotions that maybe get a little bit out of hand during the day. So I just wanted to do a sort of short video on teaching some mindfulness techniques that people might try. These techniques they're very simple techniques that you can start to build into your day. So first of all, why is mindfulness important? Mindfulness is something that essentially helps us to process what's going on in our head throughout the day in a constructive way. And it does this by stopping our mind from just kind of snowballing with all sorts of thoughts and worries and so on and so forth. So, what we try and do is we look for ways of regaining control of our brain, basically, and that's done in a number of different ways. There's lots and lots and lots of different mindfulness techniques out there. The difficulty is most mindfulness techniques are taught in a very kind of non-specific way. So quite often you'll see a kind of self-help guru talk about these very esoteric things, and it's all well and good, and you listen to it and you go, yeah, that's brilliant, that's great, thank you, now how do I do that? And they go, well, that's up to you to find out, and please buy my book that's £200, and subscribe to my monthly channel. By the way, if you want to subscribe to this channel, great. You won't be charged. But there's not a lot out there to for people to actually do that helps them to start training mindfulness. Because mindfulness is not something you just do. Mindfulness has to be learned. It's like learning a language, learning to drive, learning to do everything. And it's something that's difficult to maintain as well. It needs constant sort of maintenance, checking up on it, making sure you're still doing it, and so on and so forth. So you need to, if you're thinking, right, I want to become more mindful, I want to build that into my day and sort of take control of my emotions and my stress levels and things like that a little bit more. How do I actually start doing that? Well, before we get to the two techniques that I'm going to teach you today, which are very simple techniques, first we need to look at actually some of the psychology behind the mindfulness, or rather that you need to put in place so that you can start learning to be more mindful. So, the first thing to do is take a bit of time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20, maybe an hour. Just take some time to sit down on your own with a piece of paper and just think about all the things that you do during the day and then during the week. And you can do it as a diary or a calendar or however suits you, but just think about all the different things that you do during the day. So it might be get up, go to the bathroom, have a cup of coffee, eat some breakfast, sit and think about what I'm going to do for the day. This is probably the point where most of us actually engage in the only bit of mindfulness that we have during the day. Maybe not in a major way, but just kind of let those things go through. Maybe I've got to get the kids up, get the kids ready for school, take them to school, then I go to work. While I'm at work, I do X, Y, Z, B, C, D, F, G. Then I have lunch, and then I do some more of this, that, and the other. Then I come home, and then maybe I go to that exercise club, and I come back, and then it's my turn to put the kids to bed. So I put the kids to bed, and then I sit down, and I might watch that thing. Watching a box setting Lucifer, or I don't know, harlots or whatever's on TV. Interesting that my mind went to Lucifer and harlots. Yeah, what does that tell us? So you do, that's your day, and you think, right, I do, that's Monday. What do I do on Tuesday? So spend a bit of time looking at that and kind of look at your week, and sort of think to yourself, well, when do I actually have time to build in some mindfulness? I mean, you may already be aware of the fact that it's difficult to build it in. Now, a lot of Buddhists and mindfulness teachers, Tai Chi teachers, people like that, often like to reference a sort of quote that's usually attributed to the Buddha. Whether he said it or not, we don't know. It was a very long time ago, but it goes something along the lines of, you should meditate for 20 minutes a day, and if you haven't got time to do that, then you should meditate for 40 minutes. And I'm not suggesting that anybody builds meditation into their day at this stage, because we're just starting out with some basics here. But it is that idea of, actually, if you're jam-packed busy, then we need to kind of be looking at ways of reducing the busyness and spreading things out, because first of all, you only live once, so as far as we know, you may have different spiritual views on that, and that's absolutely fine, but as far as we know, that we can absolutely say is, we only live once. So do you want your days jammed up with stress, really, to then just croak and that's it? That was your life? Was it satisfying? No. So we need to be thinking about things, because actually most of the things that we stress and worry about really don't matter at all. Some things do, don't get me wrong, but a lot of things really don't. They can be put off till next week or tomorrow. You can spread things out a bit if you're jamming things in together. And if you're stressing and worrying about all those things that you're jamming together, then you definitely need to start stretching things apart. So spend that time, have a look at your calendar, have a look at your day-to-day activities, and look at what that's like, and see if there's any times that you think you could start building in a little bit more quiet time, rest and relaxation. Even with meditation, you don't have to actively meditate to meditate. It might be that you're doing some gardening, maybe you're going exercising, or maybe you just take 20 minutes to sit in absolute silence, and it really doesn't matter what thoughts are going through your head when you do that, as long as you're not worrying too much. Because worry, you can sit there staring at the wall going, oh my God, what's going to happen if I do this and do that? And I'm a terrible worrier. I do it a lot. And so we're going to look today at some mindfulness techniques that we can kind of jam in anywhere into our day, but also that we can break these cycles of worry and these thought patterns that are kind of negative. So just a little note there, if you hear me talk about negative thought patterns, I'm not talking about when you start thinking something that's negative, like, oh, I'm a horrible person, or bloody Tories, they ruin everyone's lives. And, I don't mean thinking about negative things, but thought patterns that negatively impact on your day. So it might be that you easily get distracted when you're in the middle of doing a job that's important and you don't finish that job, and actually then you beat yourself up because you didn't do the thing that you were supposed to be doing. That would be a negative thought pattern. So we need to look at ways that we can kind of use our brain to take control of these things, and rather than being on the back foot, letting our brain take control of us. And so that's what's sort of tricky to do. And like I say, it's learned. You're not going to get this first time. You have to keep trying it over and over again, and then after a while, it'll start to become a useful skill that you can do. So let's look at a couple of these techniques right now, because we've only got 6 minutes-ish left. Trying to keep it in the 15 if I can, because I know people get bored of my voice. It's not, who wants to hear me waffling on? Nobody. Oh, he likes the sound of his own voice. Yes, I do. My voice is ace. I love my voice. Okay, so first thing, when people have high anxiety or deal with post-traumatic shock, for example, or are having panic attacks, things like that, we look at grounding. So this is a specific technique that you can do. Sometimes it's called anchoring. This is a specific technique that you can do that allows you to focus on what's going on in the moment. Okay, it allows you to essentially reset your brain, and I'll talk a little bit about how that works in a sec. So, the first thing that I'm going to suggest that you do is you get yourself a talisman. Now, what could a talisman be? There's lots of different talismans out there that you could use for this. It could be a fidget spinner, it could be anything. My particular talisman is this little cloth bag. Well, it's velvet, in fact. Feels very nice, very tactile. It's full of little beanie things. Smells of lavender. It's got lavender in there. A very kind friend gave me this a long time ago, and I've kept it for a very long time. Now, I tend to have nightmares quite often, and they can be very stressful. So if I'm having a nightmare and I'm really confused about what's going on in the world around me, sometimes I think that the dream that I was having was very real, and I still believe that I'm in the dream, or I still think it's real when I wake up. And I can get quite distressed by that if I remember to, because sometimes you forget. I will pick up this little bag and I'll rub it between my hands like this and give it a smell. And because I know this bag, I've had this for a long time. I know it very well. I know how it feels. I know how it looks. I know all the different idiosyncrasies about it. I'd recognise it anywhere. I know the smell very well. You know, it's lavender, which is a soothing smell, as we know from our aromatherapy classes. And that helps me to focus in on where I am, focus in on the moment, and that can be really helpful. Helps bring me back from that highly anxious state, helps me to take control of my brain running away. It's not perfect, it doesn't always work, doesn't continually manage to get rid of those weird dream thoughts that sort of hang around for a while, but it does get me going in the right direction, even if it's not 100% successful. And then I'm able to sort of refocus on myself and start thinking about other things that I can do to help ground myself. So another technique which you can do at any time during the day, and like I say, you can have any talisman at all. It could be a fidget spinner that you fiddle with, it could be a pen that you chew on, it could be anything, you know, whatever the object is, as long as it's yours. Maybe it's got a meaning to you for some reason, and it's not something that anybody has. It's small, so it can go in a pocket, it can go in your bag, you can take it with you anywhere. If you start panicking or start feeling stressed or start feeling like things are getting on your mind, get this object out, fiddle with it, play with it, just look at it, take it in. That's the object. The next thing you should do is looking around the room and naming objects. Now, this is something that again is a technique that's mostly used for people with post-traumatic shock disorder, but you will find that it is very helpful with training your brain to become more mindful. So there is a bit of a caveat to this, which is why I suggest using this thing first, which is that you need to first get control of your mind or be aware that you're spiraling in some direction in order to be able to do that. That's why the anchor object is quite helpful. The anchoring object, if you've got it like on your keys or in your pocket and that you touch it quite frequently, can like, oh, that's my anchor object, what am I doing? It's a little reminder for you. Then you start looking around the room or around the environment that you're in and start naming objects. There's a tree, there's a car, there's a man walking his dog. What a nice dog. He's got a furry, oh, I like his coat. Getting trapped in the thought spiral about the dog, move on from the dog. There's some grass, there's traffic lights, there's a Hyundai. Haven't seen one of them in a while. Not so popular these days. You know, things like that. And you start naming objects. Now, the reason for doing this is the way our brain works is it takes in absolutely every piece of information around it, and it makes a decision about whether or not that piece of information is useful to you, whether it should be ignored or not. So, for example, if you see a bus drive past and there's an advert on the side of the bus, your brain is trained to ignore that advert as much as possible. You don't need to take it in. It's extra information that you don't need. Okay, but what advertisers are trying to do is get your attention. There'll be bright colours, it'll be, usually an attractive person that might catch your eye to make you look at them, or something like that. And what it does is your brain is deciding whether this information is useful to you or not. If it's something that might be useful to you, then the brain will catch on it and make you look at it and take in that information. So our brain is kind of doing this all the time, and it's something that happens without us even thinking about it. We don't notice it. So often the things that we have in our house that are around us, we don't look at those objects anymore because we're very used to them. We sort of take them for granted, which is nice in a way, because when we're in our home environment, we feel more comfortable, more relaxed. We know we're at home, and so we get that feeling of relaxation and things like that. But the brain doesn't do this. It doesn't look at those objects in our environment, which is why we can easily get into worry spirals when we're at home, but not when we're out and about and walking around so much. So you need to start naming those objects. What that does is it resets your brain. If you've got into a spiral of some kind, maybe it's anger, maybe it's anxiousness, maybe it's something like that, and your brain is just focused on this one thing, we're taking the brain back to that basic function of let's assess the world around us and decide if it's safe. Okay? Because that's what the brain is always doing, all the time. If suddenly you smell burning, you'd go, oh, shit, I left the toast on. That's what we're programmed to do. That program is always running underneath. So what we're doing is we're accessing that mental program that's there, that very basic program, to say, right, let's assess our environment and just look at the things that are safe and say, right, that's safe, that's safe, that's safe. And that allows us to bring us into that moment. It brings us back to brass tacks, back to square one, where we can go, right, I now have control of my brain. So these two techniques, although they're used, generally speaking, for people who are experiencing high levels of anxiety and distress, they can be used to start you on the path of becoming more mindful. Okay, so they're really great techniques, really simple to use. Talisman of some kind, allowing you to anchor yourself, allowing you to ground yourself, and just notice that there's something going on in your head at the moment, a kind of worry spiral or anger spiral or anxiety spiral, something like that that's going on. And then the technique of looking at objects around the room and naming them. Say them out loud. Say them out loud if you want to. Somebody thinks you're mad, screw them. They don't matter anyway. You're taking control of your mind. You're not mad at all. And you won't do this perfectly every time. This won't happen straight away. You've got to keep practicing it, keep trying to do it. And if you've mapped out your week, look for times when you can build that in. Even if you think it's not necessary because you're not actually worrying about anything, still do it anyway. Still do it anyway, because it will start bringing in that thing. Go for a walk in the woods and start looking at the trees. Look at the different types of trees. Notice the difference between those things. Or even if you're sat in a meeting and the meeting's kind of going around your head and people are droning on and you're starting to feel like, oh my God, just start looking around the room. There's Jim, there's Barry, there's Selena, there's Carl, there's Fiona. These aren't people I know, by the way. There's a water butt. The projector seems to be making a funny noise. These things going on. There's a table, there's my pens. Notice and name all of those things. Now, as you've probably spotted, I've exceeded the 15-minute mark by nearly 5 minutes now, so I'm going to draw a close to this here. I hope this was helpful to you. If it was, like, share and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more mindfulness techniques that could help you, then do comment below and I can do another video looking at some more in-depth things in the future. And let me know. Thanks for watching.